Well, first of all, I want to say that Tony has done a huge service in shining a spotlight on this injustice of the property tax, and despite the fact that Tony has called off the hunger strike today, I want to send a clear message to the Taoiseach or to any government minister or government TD that this campaign is far from over and that this injustice has to be sorted out. There was a number of interventions today. I spoke to Tony on a number of occasions today, and we've set out a scenario that will unfold over the next couple of days that has allowed Tony to come off the hunger strike. At this point in time, I'm unable to spell out the complete details, but it is suffice to say that Tony was satisfied with it, and he has called off his hunger strike, which I think is very important, because nobody should suffer any more as a result of what this government has done in terms of the property tax and the austerity measures that they have introduced.
And so will it be the case, in your opinion, that Tony will have his constitutional right to be able to work and provide for his family?
Well, I would hope so, but that's not clear, and that all has to be dealt with at a later stage. But there are steps in progress that can allow a pathway for Tony to articulate those views without having to be on protest and hunger strike, and we expect that those steps will be taken in the next couple of days.
Taken today, I'm just delighted that Tony is off the hunger strike, because I think he was getting to a very critical stage himself, and it's a long time not to have food coming into your belly, and I wouldn't encourage anybody else to take that form of action. But I understand where Tony was coming from. He explained it very well and articulated it very well, that he felt not a victim, but that the government, with the austerity cuts and the last 5 years, it just became impossible and unbearable for him to try and find a pathway that he could actually earn an income for his family and that. And I think this measure he took was, as I said, drastic, but I stood in solidarity along with everybody else with Tony over the last couple of weeks. And while I wouldn't encourage the sort of action, I think, as Pearse said, that what he did was a very difficult thing to do, but a very important thing to do, for him to highlight what the economy is doing to people. And I think rather than taking individual actions like this, which Tony very bravely took, we have to do it collectively. We can't leave one person to try and take on the might of a government or a legislation, and that we go forward in the future collectively to really try and organise as best we can to resist the austerity budget that's coming down the line, the water tax that are coming down the line, and the broadcasting taxes, and the further budget cuts next year. So I think that's what we'll all be trying to do, is organise to resist that as best we can collectively and in strength.
And can you tell us just any dealings you had with the Taoiseach today? Any conversation that happened?
We've had contact since John Halligan raised this in the Dáil in the leaders' questions. I was talking to the Taoiseach on Wednesday. Today again, rang his office, pressure from Bernie. And today he was positive in his attitude towards what he'd like to see happening, and I think that the fact that Tony's come off the hunger strike now leaves that open a little bit for us to try and intervene a bit more.
We're all really so happy for Tony and Noel, and I'd like to thank Joan and Pearse and everybody, John Halligan, Desi Ellis, and everybody who worked so hard to bring this to a good conclusion. And I would concur with everything that Pearse and Joan said, that we've more unites us than divides us in this country, I think, and especially with the onslaught of the austerity measures by the government. And Tony has been a beacon for change. I know drastically he felt that he had to stand up on his own, and he was quite isolated for a while until he brought his own measures on the street. And when he did that, people that understood what Tony was going through came, I would say, to his assistance as best we could as ordinary 5/8 in the community. But once again, I'm really delighted, and it was privilege and a pleasure to have come into contact with so many good people that I've met in this campaign, and I would particularly, if I can take just a minute, particularly like to thank the people in Finglas that came out to support Tony, and have been with Tony shoulder to shoulder for the last 2 weeks, and they are Terence Carey and Keith Noon, and not forgetting my own daughter Jessica Hughes. She has been very good. She kept the admin page going with all the information, and I think if we have young people like Jessica, and there are many out there, because there's many young people that were active on the page themselves, sending in comments, and their parents saying that they were bringing their children in on Saturday and tomorrow, and it's important that we do bring our young people on board, and they get actively involved in the huge yearning, if that's the right word to use, for change in this country. Brilliant, and we're all so delighted. Thanks everybody.